critical mass, we'll go ahead and get started. I already appreciate some of the questions in the chat. There are not any handouts that you need in advance. We'll be posting these slides and this recording on the TCLAS website. We'll also make sure to send a follow-up email to everyone who has registered. And appreciate everyone. Yep, good morning to everyone. We're excited. We have about just shy of 200 districts all across the state joining us in this program moving forward. So looking forward to everyone continuing to connect in the next couple of years through our program. All right, so we'll get started. First and foremost, welcome from our Resilient School Support Program team. For those of you I have not met before, I'm Teresa Spiewak, the Director of Resilient School Strategy. Along with me is my wonderful team of District Support Specialists and Research and Operations Specialists, where we're really here to ensure that you're getting the support you need as a district through our program. Also provided our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point. We're always happy to connect and answer any questions. And so how we'll spend our time today for this webinar, we'll go through quick welcome, introductions. We'll talk about some of the broader TCLAS award next steps. We'll do a quick deep dive into what you can expect from Decision 1A and 1B supports, and then we'll recap some of the next steps that we'll ask you to take to better inform our program moving forward. And so please know you can either put into the Q&A, also into the chat. We'll be kind of monitoring some questions as we'll go, and we'll make sure we'll pause at the end before we exit out to really answer any questions. But always happy to connect afterwards as well. And so you are here, you're at the Decision 1 webinar. Like I said, I know many of you are attending quite a few of these throughout the next couple of weeks. So this one in particular is focused on those who've accepted their award for Decision 1, both RSSP strategic planning supports, as well as that 1B data fellow grant. So we'll cover both of those in this time. Another piece, I know that you'll need to fill out the e-grants. There's additional webinars for any staff who is focused on submitting those e-grants application. All of this information is located on TEA's TCLAS website, where you've continued to be able to access TCLAS information throughout the process. And so we'll go ahead and dive right on into what Resilient School Support Program and Data Fellow Support will look like in the coming school years. And so we're really grounded in our theory of action that through strategic planning, performance management, and continuous improvement, you're able to increase student outcomes. And so this has been pivotal to our program and our past 2 years of support, and is something that we'll continue to anchor on as we think about school years 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24. And so what this support will look like will be in two different parts. So this first part, with your technical assistance provider, you'll be supported in the strategic planning, implementation, measurement planning, and goal setting process. And so we know people are coming into this in various starting places, where some people may have already created a COVID recovery and learning acceleration plan. Some may have not. A key cornerstone of our program is that we provide differentiation and flexibility to best meet individual needs. And so what this could look like for someone who's been a participant of the program or may already have a strong strategic plan in place is really going back and looking at your data and understanding the needs, engaging stakeholders, surfacing what are those pockets that need additional strategies and support to really accelerate learning and improve student outcomes. So for instance, you may learn through this process that middle school math might be in a great need, and historically has been a great need that you really want to focus on supports moving forward to move your district closer to its North goal. From there, after looking at the data and understanding what are some of the biggest rocks you need to move when you think about COVID recovery and learning acceleration, you will identify strategies and cohere priorities. And so this is something very exciting about our program. Now that we have TCLAS, and you may be in a world in which you've already started engaging in programs and strategies that meet some of your greatest needs. So I know a lot of you have signed up for Decision 2. You may already be adopting high quality instruction materials. A lot of you participating in Decision 6 and implementing high dosage tutoring, ADSE, extended school day. And so this is where our program can play a strength in really helping you to identify what are all the different initiatives, programs, and priorities that your district has, and how do they all work together to ensure that you're moving in the same direction towards the same broader goals. And so we really feel like it's an important piece to pause here and really make sure that this is all working towards your greater goals. And the Resilient School Support Program and that technical assistance provider can help you really streamline everything that you're involved in. From there, you'll set goals and your measurement strategies. And so we'll embark in 3 cycles of continuous improvement. So each cycle will have its formative goals that ultimately will lead into your summative end of year goals. What are you trying to achieve when you think about moving those big rocks and where you really need to accelerate learning and improve student outcomes, as well as measurement strategies? What are your data, system structures, and protocols in place to be able to progress monitor towards those goals and ensure that you're having teacher, leader capacity being built, and that ultimately students are learning at the end of the day and moving towards their goals. And then from there, making implementation plans. And so knowing that many of you are involved in many different programs, initiatives, priorities, having a very clear understanding of how all of these are being implemented, how they can connect and work together when you think about implementation, and take into consideration capacity. And we know that's a huge part of, as you're thinking about some people who might be doing multiple programs, initiatives, what does that look like to ensure that you're implementing with fidelity and effectiveness, but also utilizing your capacity and your internal resources as best as possible for this. And last but not least, something that's actually included along each step of the way is investing stakeholders. We know a lot of this is also grounded in change management, and part of that is investing stakeholders. And this piece is really stamping before moving deeper into the work, understanding what is each person's role in really standing up and implementing the strategic plan, and ultimately feeling like you know who's accountable and what will be taking place to ultimately make these strategies and the strategic plan come to life and be executed with fidelity. From there, you'll have an option depending on what your greatest needs are. And so ultimately, everyone will move into some setup support, implementation of their plans, ongoing performance management, and then continuous improvement. And so option A is what we've provided to current LEAs in the program for this current school year. And so what that looks like is as you're doing your strategic planning process, you might have identified 3 strategies. So for instance, you might have identified that you are going to adopt high quality instruction materials, you want to do just-in-time intervention, and you'll be doing high dosage tutoring. And so you realize you have the supports for high quality instruction materials and you have the supports for high dosage tutoring, but where you don't have technical assistance and where your district and campuses would need support is in just-in-time intervention. That's where option A could be a great choice for your district. This is where you would identify with your technical assistance provider that moving forward, you would identify that one learning acceleration strategy that you want them to support you on. And then we believe in shrinking the change. And so the best way to really understand how to implement with effectiveness, use data to drive that continuous improvement is using data to really identify what are the campus's content and grade levels that ultimately really need that direct technical assistance support for that strategy. And then from there, figuring out what is the setup support needed. So what that might look like throughout late spring and throughout the summer is the technical assistance provider doing professional development on that strategy, whether it's a trainer's model or actual direct professional development to those campuses, grade levels, and content areas. So for instance, if you're prioritizing 6th through 8th grade, 5 middle schools math, that technical assistance provider would be working with those campuses to train them up on that strategy, but then also considering, do you have the right resources in place? Do you have the right master schedule in place to support that strategy, as well as the other 2 strategies that you're implementing? And then also thinking about, do you have the progress monitoring system set up in place to ultimately be able to implement that strategy? From there, once the school year begins, we'll go into 3 cycles of continuous improvement. And so you'll set goals for each one, you'll have your implementation plan and be very clear on what is the support the technical assistance provider will continue to provide you. on a weekly to bi-weekly basis to drive that implementation of the strategy. And then at the end of each cycle, you step back in what's called an improvement review, where we look at data and really identify where has progress been made, where has capacity been built, where are we seeing growth in student outcomes, and then also consider what adjustments or additional supports need to be made as you identify goals for the next cycle, so on and so forth, so that by the end of the year, you really have built your internal capacity to continue scaling up the strategy as you see fit, or continuing to strengthen it within those pockets that especially needed that strategy support. The other option that your district could opt into is, again, knowing that many of you are getting supports beyond just TCLAS as well, is that you might actually have support or internal expertise and resources already for each one of the learning acceleration strategies and priorities that you've identified in your strategic plan. And so then from there, what your technical assistance provider support could look like is high-level ongoing performance management across all of these strategies in your strategic plan. And so thinking about really for those of you who are embarking in quite a few decisions within TCLAS, this could be a great option of continuing to work with a technical assistance provider who can help you cohere the different implementation plans, streamline what's taking place, how is everything moving towards that greater North Star that your district has set, and then thinking about that system setup support. And so what are the district-wide or high-level data and progress monitoring systems needed to ultimately be able to support the performance management and ongoing progress monitoring towards your whole strategic plan that you've developed for COVID recovery and learning acceleration? And then again, you'll go into 3 cycles of continuous improvement, where each cycle you'll have goals for each strategy of what you're hoping to accomplish and implement, where you're wanting the student outcome goals to land by each cycle. And then you'll also participate in those 3 improvement reviews, where you'll step back and utilize data analysis and have great conversation around how can you continuously improve your strategies throughout the school year to get closer to your goals and outcomes. And so that is what 1A support through Resilient School Support Program can look like in your participation, whether you're participating in just school years 22-23, or you're also participating in 23-24 as well. And we'll continue to customize and differentiate the support based on each district's individual needs. And so just a reminder, some of the assurances that you agreed to, we'll give a little bit of a voiceover here. And so first, you'll have a designated learning acceleration team. And so really, when you think about change management, you think about the strategic planning process, it's important to have multiple stakeholder voice at the table. And so these are the required components of this team, but please know they all play a different role and may have different time components to participating on this team. So for instance, the senior project sponsor is someone who has that high leadership ability to really clear any hurdles, stamp any big decisions that may need to be made. They may not be involved along every step of the way. Of course, they may also be, but really the person who is the primary contact for both the TEA Resilient School Support Program as well as the technical assistance provider is your RSSP lead. So this is the person who will have majority of the time, responsibility, and accountability, ensuring that the work is progressing forward at the district, and that you're connecting with the technical assistance provider and ensuring that you're getting the support needed. And so this person is meeting with that technical assistance provider either weekly, bi-weekly, but then also determining when others from the team should be joining. This has looked different across our current 80 districts in the program. Some have their whole team join for every program. Some have the broader team join once a month, every other week. Again, you'll figure out what cadence works best for your district and with the technical assistance support that you're being provided. Other key roles are your curriculum instruction lead, diverse learner lead, a data lead, and focal school leaders. These people are critical as we think about the students we want to impact and the teachers and leaders capacity that we're trying to build when we think about COVID recovery and learning acceleration, and ensuring that they're able to bring their perspectives to this work to really shape what the needs are and the support that could be provided. In addition, so really just committing that the improvement plans, the strategies that you stamp, the strategic plan that you create, that you'll follow through with it. We know that things happen and things come up, especially in continuous improvement. You may identify if there's a need to adjust or shift, but we always ask that these be data-driven and need-based decisions, but ultimately that you're committed to the program, you're committed to completing each step of the way for the support. Other pieces are our network events and support. So we'll do a launch webinar in January, and I'll provide more information about that at the end of the webinar. Again, that TA partner RSSP LEA lead coaching call can be on a weekly to bi-weekly basis. As you move into part 2 components, that may look different. That may look like doing a professional development one week. That may be doing the improvement review one week. Depending on where the work really needs to be driven, those will shift based on your needs and what the work dictates. Thinking about that collaboration, again, bringing the broader team to the table every couple of weeks at minimum. Those 3 improvement reviews throughout the year, and then the TEA progress check-in. So about once every 2 months, you'll meet with just a member of our team. This is not for accountability purposes. This is truly a chance for us to learn what's working well for you all, where are you seeing progress, what feedback do you have for the technical assistance provider, what feedback do you have for us as a team. We really take these seriously and make sure that we listen to you. We love hearing about what's happening at your district. Where are you seeing wins? Where are you seeing challenges? What are other things that Resilient School Support Program may be able to mobilize and lean into to support? So it just gives us an opportunity to continue to learn more about your district, your needs, and ways we can better support them. And so a couple other assurances is that you'll collaborate with both us and your technical assistance provider, meaning you'll provide classroom, tool, and data access when needed. We are not at all attached to accountability. This is truly to drive the strategic planning and continuous improvement process. And so really the critical components to that is that everything's grounded in data and helping to inform decisions. And that's why it will be helpful and critical for different people involved to have access to data to really be able to support in knowing where to provide next steps and where to lean in. And so we'll continue to provide more information regarding this. This is part of, at the end of the webinar, we'll collect more information and we'll continue to collect it throughout the program to learn more about what is the best data that you can use to progress monitor towards your strategic planning and learning acceleration strategies. And so more will be released on that based on where your supports are going. And so a couple of quick frequently asked questions. I know some have popped into the Q&A, so some of these may be answered right now. If not, I'll make sure to pause at the end to answer some highly anticipated questions being popped in there. So how will we be matched with the technical assistance provider? In addition, in that survey that we will be providing at the end of this webinar that we'll ask you to fill out, we'll be asking for your input. So questions such as if you are a current LEA, do you have a preference, if possible, to stay with your current provider? If you are new and joining the program, if you have current partnerships in place, describing those times and experiences when you've had particularly positive and effective partnerships, what those looked like, what contributed to that. We are right now in the emergency procurement process, so we cannot release who the technical assistance providers are just yet in the matches, but we're absolutely going to be including your input as we go throughout that process. And we'll make sure our goal is by November to release who that match may be. But again, all of it is contingent upon where we are in the emergency procurement process. And so as soon as we can release more information, we absolutely will. How often will my technical assistance provider travel to my district for support? And so we are allotting approximately $6,000 per year of support for them to do travel. But please know, because of these, the grant money, there's pretty stringent state and federal travel guidelines that they need to follow. Because these are in-kind services, meaning that we contract with the technical assistance providers, we manage all of the invoicing, billing, receipts, between us, and we leave you all out of it to make sure that you can completely focus on the strategic planning and continuous improvement support. There are some things we need to be aware of. It also, we know $6,000 will not stretch to potentially coming on a weekly or biweekly basis. So majority of this travel should be dedicated to those major milestones, such as improvement reviews, observation walkthroughs, rather than just weekly or biweekly check-in conversations. So that is something you can norm with your technical assistance provider up front regarding what are some of the best components for them to come travel and be in person for supports. And then if you've already done a strategic plan, like I said, we'll provide differentiation. And so whether you already have one and utilizing a rubric or analysis to determine if there's areas that could be strengthened or if there's new data to take into consideration to drive that plan, or if you're starting from step one of really crafting a COVID recovery and learning acceleration plan, we'll also have those supports in place as well. And so if you're a current year 2 RSSP district, what does it look like when we start year 3 in January, but of also continuing year 2? So again, our program is really rooted in making decisions based on your input. In that survey, we'll also be asking questions to gather your perspective and your recommendations of what it could possibly look like to either do concurrent supports or shift supports if you believe like your capacity may be affected. But we'll release more on this after we've collected your input and determine what are some of the best decisions and flexibility pieces that we can provide moving forward to best meet your needs. And so I will pause here to kind of look and see if there's any 1A specific questions before diving into the 1B overview and giving you more information there. So how will RSSP work with CRMSI program? And I also see some other questions regarding ongoing alignment. And so what that looks like, especially thinking about this component here, is thinking about what are the different programs and strategies you're participating in, what supports are they providing, where do these overlap, where do they align, where are there pieces that you may need to be intentional about who's involved in what. And so those will be ongoing conversations throughout the whole process of really learning more about what are you participating in, what does that look like, and how do we best cohere supports across multiple programs and initiatives, as well as if you do decide to just focus in and get direct technical assistance on one strategy. So that's really involved in living ongoing conversations with your technical assistance provider. And then I see, is there a board review mandatory? We're thinking of an update every other month. And so this is actually a piece that we've been provided feedback in this past year. We included where districts would have a board presentation at the end of their strategic planning process. And so this is a piece that we're actually interested in your input. Some of the early input from districts currently participating was that they were actually seeking a presentation that could even go beyond the board. At the end of the day, we really want to make sure that you feel set up and supported to be able to share your plan with all of your stakeholders and invest them and continue to communicate the progress. And so that's something that we'll absolutely be collecting your input on of what you believe is the best route for that. And a great question, you're a small district, can a team member have more than one role? Absolutely. Even as a small district, there's some people who do not have a different person in each role. Your curriculum instruction lead might be the same person as your lead and your senior sponsor. So there's quite a few chief academic officers and even superintendents who play multiple roles on these programs, as well as executive directors and others, and really figure out the best way to manage time and people's capacity, as well as drive the work forward for their district. Great question. When does the actual support begin? We will kick off in late January, and then the support will begin from there. Then you'll be moving forward with your technical assistance provider, embarking on the program supports. Yep, and so we will be posting this PowerPoint and this recording on the TCLAS webinar website. Everyone who's registered will also get a follow-up email, ensuring that you get the links to them as well. All right. I will continue moving forward in the sake of time. But again, if there's any additional questions, happy to reach out afterwards and continuing to have conversations and answer questions as they arise. And so the next piece, for those of you who have accepted and opted into the 1B Data Fellow Grant, this is a new component to our program. We heard feedback in the past couple of years that it would be helpful to be able to provide a person, an FTE, who could really help support with building out and developing the data protocols, systems, structures, and support needed to do strategic planning and the ongoing progress monitoring of performance management and continuous improvement. And so this data fellow is directly connected to supporting the 1A strategic plan. And so this person will absolutely be a part of your RSSP Learning Acceleration Task Force. They'll be working very much hand in hand with your lead. They'll be joining the monthly check-ins with us on the RSSP TEA side. And they'll also have some other assurances that I'll cover here in a minute as part of receiving this grant. And so in order to continue remaining eligible for the 1B Data Fellow Grant, you will need to continue having ongoing full participation in 1A strategic planning through the RSSP supports. And so as the RSSP 1A supports are playing out, here's what the role of the data fellow will look like. And so they are really pivotal when thinking about the data collection and analysis that supports identifying and cohering priorities. And so they'll be working closely with the technical assistance provider, the lead, to ensuring that this is taking place and really building up their skill set to be able to do so. They'll also be a critical component in being responsible of ensuring that all of the goals are set and developing a measurement plan to continue to progress monitor towards these goals. And then they'll also be working in the PLC and the other supports that they'll be receiving and identifying or even modifying, if you have these currently in place, any data system structures and protocols that are necessary when you think about implementation and continuous improvement science. And so really they play a critical role in ensuring that these key milestones within part one, when you think about how to measure and monitor the progress towards your strategic plan, is really at the forefront of their work and what they'll be receiving in professional learning community supports to be able to support their district team through learning acceleration alongside the technical assistance provider. And then they also too can have the option that will follow along with what your district overall decides in part two support. So if you're moving into option A, where you're just identifying that one strategy and looking for direct technical assistance to implement and continuously improve that one strategy, or if you're doing that high level ongoing performance management across your strategic plan, they'll ensure that they're setting up data progress monitoring systems, and they'll continue to ensure that there's fidelity and effectiveness. And so our teachers and leaders trained and able to use these in order to best drive the work. They'll also be working to collect and analyze data, whether that's a bi-weekly or monthly basis, whatever makes sense based off your option and based off your strategy, to continue to check along the way as you're doing your implementation plans. Are these driving the actions that you set forth, and are you making progress towards those goals, or things need to be adjusted before the improvement review as the data is surfacing? They'll also be really critical in supporting getting prepared for that improvement review with the technical assistance provider, and really looking at what is the data that needs to be analyzed, providing data visualization supports, analytics supports, and really helping to drive the conversation around what progress has been made towards the goals and priorities, and what does that mean for as you think about goals and supports in the next improvement cycle. And so there'll really be a pivotal role in ensuring that data is driving each step of the process and supports along the way. And so what the assurances will look like is that they're ultimately committing and standing up any tools, systems, and protocols needed to ensure that your strategic plan, your performance management, and continuous improvement processes are grounded in data. And this can look different. Again, we'll absolutely provide flexibility and differentiation. We know some people are coming in with very robust data, big data platforms and systems that have been in place and are used very effectively, versus some are actually looking for building up from the ground. And so we'll provide that differentiation to really meet where's your district, and then ultimately what do you need to drive the continuous improvement process. And so some of what their events and supports will look like, in addition to joining the LEA RSSP team collaboration, they'll have their own PLC trainings. And so we can imagine that these will look more frequently at first, but then as you get into more of the continuous improvement cycles, and even thinking about the second year of the program, be a little bit less frequent as you go from having to design and stand up all of these things to then even its own ongoing continuous improvement of the system structures, tools, and protocols that they've developed or implementing for your district. So they'll participate in majority of everything that the rest of your RSSP team is, but they'll also have those PLC trainings to participate in. So anywhere from 1 to about 3 to 4 times a month. We'll be providing those closer towards January when that support will kick off. We too are in the middle of emergency procurement process there. And so once that information is available, we'll make sure to share it out with you all right away as well. And so another piece, a lot of questions I know I've noticed is around how can that actual money be spent? And so this is part of what's been included in the grant calculator. And so majority of the funds must be spent towards payroll. So whether that's a salary or stipend, please know this also includes, especially with the salary, of if you need to provide benefits, retirement. So it might not all be just the direct salary towards that person, but when you think about the other costs that come with hiring an FTE or an extending a stipend to an internal or external person. So that's part of what we mean by payroll cost. Everything else in regards to the money needs to be in support of that data fellow. So it cannot be given to multiple stipends to other people on the learning acceleration team. It truly needs to be towards supporting that data fellow and meeting the assurances and driving the continuous improvement efforts of the district. So what that can look like for supplies and materials and other operating costs. If you do want to use some of that money to invest in a new data or technology platform, or you may already have one, but it costs extra to give additional licenses for people to have more advanced features, fund up to 25% of that allotment can be used for things like that. If there's additional data visualization programming softwares, other components, that's where some of the other funds can also go towards. At the end of the day, you're not required to spend absolutely every last dollar of it, but this just gives you some insight and guidance into what can be spent utilizing the Data Fellow grant money. And a couple of quick frequently asked questions here, especially in regards to hiring this person. So does it need to be an external FTE, or can someone internally be utilized? So either is an option, but please do know that if you are designating someone who also has another full-time role as the data fellow, they'll still be responsible for completing all assurances. So if you have a principal or you have another person who may be interested in building their capacity and attending these PLCs and really leaning into this work, that they will still be expected to attend the PLCs, attend the RSSP meetings, in addition to other things as part of being the data fellow stipend or getting that FTE allotment. And so what type of hiring supports will RSSP be offering? So once that procurement is finalized, the first thing we'll be releasing are things such as job descriptions, onboarding plans, ways to source and identify the appropriate potential staff for these roles. Right now, because we have estimated over 175 data fellows participating across every region here in Texas, we can't commit to providing individual assistance support for hiring in this role. But please know we're always happy to answer any questions to provide whatever guidance we may be able to. And then again, there's not necessarily specific platforms or technology that your district will be required to utilize. We'll be asking in that end of webinar survey some questions around potentially what data are you already using, what platforms you're already having, how long have you been utilizing this? And again, we're utilizing all this information that you're providing us in this end of webinar survey to really make sure that we're differentiating and planning supports to best meet the needs across the cohort of both districts and data fellows. So really appreciate in advance you all taking the time to fill those out and providing as much context as you can. It's really important to us that we design program supports that meet the needs of our districts. And so really appreciate your input today in filling out that survey. All right, so before we get to closing and next steps, I'll pause here again to look at more common questions popping up. Yes, and so if you believe that you may already have internal systems and structures that already do what the data fellow role is already doing, or that through the technical assistance support and that setup support, you may be able to set up some of the remaining system structures or protocols needed, you do not need to hire a data fellow. So as you've learned more here, you may realize that you already have this capacity or expertise, or just need a few things here or there that could be part of setup support. I'll provide some directions on if you decide to change your mind about any award acceptances in TCLAS, what those next steps will look like. And so one piece I will note, each person's or each district's technical assistance provider may not be the same provider as your data fellow technical assistance provider. But please know all will be working very closely and understanding what is required of both 1A, 1B supports and what's taking place. And that's why it will be really critical that the data fellow is joining in each of the RSSP 1A support meetings, knowing that their efforts are supporting that strategic planning and continuous improvement process, but also able to really take back what they're getting from their PLCs and apply it to the work that you're doing in 1A. Yep. And so can the data fellow only work with the RSSP data collection? Can this fellow help track other TCLAS decision points? That's a great question. And so a lot of that will be really dependent on which option you decide to do through the 1A supports. And so if you're doing that option where you are really focusing on that one strategy and getting direct technical assistance for that strategy and that priority, that data fellows first and foremost priority is to ensure that everything's set up to support the structures for that strategy. However, please know that there may be a world in which your data fellow has additional capacity outside of it. And the other piece that we're hoping is that your data fellow is ultimately building the skill set, expertise, and capacity to then take that skill set, systems, and structures and apply it to other things. And so there is a great world in which your data fellow could be leaning in to support other things, but as part of the assurances, they're first and foremost be responsible for supporting the RSSP efforts. Great question about in terms of the data fellow position. This will be a person completely hired by your district. The only pieces that we are providing on our end is first the funding and the assurances that need to be followed, and in what way you can use the funding towards that position. In terms of certifying them, evaluating them, nothing formally would come from us, but that's actually a great idea that we'll take down now, that could be a great thing in the PLC to provide districts is with the person in that position. How do you support them, and how do you performance manage them in that role as well? So appreciate that question there, and it's definitely something we can add to our list of resources to provide. Right now, all of our funding is tied to TCLAS in that ESSER 3 grant pool. So at this time, we cannot guarantee that there would be future years of funding to support that role. And so ESSER 3 funding, how this works, so 1A is in-kind supports from us, and so we're pulling from our own pool. And then the ESSER 3 funding for the data fellow, we are not taking out of your individual district's ESSER 3 funding. That's coming from our TCLAS pool of funding. So that $1.2 billion that we as a state have put into TCLAS to provide learning acceleration supports. And yes, this data fellow can be someone who is remote. In early conversations with other districts who've started exploring options, some have started reaching out to neighboring universities or colleges and potentially looking into any partnerships that may already exist of someone who may be a grad student or who may be interested in a fellowship stipend type position and be remote in this support. So the data fellow person could absolutely support remotely. Wonderful. All right, so I know that's most of the Q&A. I'll make sure I go ahead and check into the chat as well. Yeah, so great questions. And I know a lot of this is kind of asking already for some different resources. As soon as we finalize this emergency procurement and can release who the providers are and their resources, we absolutely will. Our hopes is that we are able to do this by the end of October, if not sooner. So definitely noting a lot of your questions around hiring supports, training supports for this person. Part of the PLCs will be actually training and developing that person to have research-based strategies and practices to bring back to the district. Great, and hearing like a lot of like curiosity around stipend amounts districts are thinking. This is always great. Like I said, in RSSP, we're always interested in what would be most helpful. So definitely now thinking about a possible idea around bringing districts together sometime this fall to discuss how you're approaching the hiring process, how you're thinking about stipends, salaries and whatnot. And so whenever we find a trend in ways people want to collaborate, so definitely also noting down that as well. The PLCs for this position will begin in January as well. So both 1A and 1B support will kick off in January. The funds will be available for hiring a data fellow starting in January. So you can begin utilizing the funds in January. If you're only doing 1 year of support, that's 18 months. And so that would be January 2022 through June of 2023. If you've opted into the 2 years of supports, it would extend all the way to June 2024. Like I said, there will not necessarily be stringent requirements of what data, what software. Really, as our program, we're focused on research-based best practices, and we understand there's many different things out in the field. So we'll continue to provide flexibility and differentiation of here's this best practice. Depending on what you utilize or what your needs are at your district, here's how you take this back to your district. And so 1B funds cannot be used to provide stipends for teachers or others on the advisory group team. Anyone who receives part of those payroll funds as either an FTE or a stipend will be responsible for attending all of the data fellow assurances. There is a world, I know some people have been exploring splitting it between 2 people, especially if you're anticipating that you do want 2 people to have the skill set support, and you may have that ability in-house or externally. But both people would be responsible for the assurances. Yes, contracted services can be allowed. Again, that would be negotiated and handled between you and whoever you may be partnering with. And so again, it would be really designated towards if you're doing an FTE and you're hiring this person and you're providing benefits, or if you're just providing a stipend, that both rolls into the payroll funds. And then that also would allow it to be eligible for additional funds up to 25% each if that person or the person you're contracting with or doing a fellowship or stipend with needs additional technology or data resources to be set up for success to support your district. Yes, and so you can split it between different people with different responsibilities, but please understand, again, it all comes down to the assurances and whether you believe the person will have the capacity to do the assurances. Oh, great question around 6,200 company or university contracted service. Originally, before, if it's intended as a stipend or person, and so I know there's been discussions with ESCs, universities, where you can contract and have a person who is then able to receive the stipend or funds. But I'll go ahead and double check with our grants team. But I know in our original intention of determining this is that we are knowing that there may be a world in which you want to partner with another entity who could provide that person, whether it be a fellowship, internship, and other creative ways to be able to have access to people who have some of this background and may be looking for this opportunity to support. So great question. I'll double check, but I know when originally filling this out, we were definitely thinking that there's a world in which many would like to go towards neighboring partnerships. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I know a couple more questions are rolling in. What we'll do is continue to collect some of these frequently asked questions within the chat right now and make sure we provide additional follow-up to answer these moving forward. But again, great questions. And we'll make sure we provide at the end all of our contact information to reach out to us individually as well. So next steps from here will be in October, we'll be finalizing our procurement process to be able to provide some of these resources and information around technical assistance provider matches by November. Other pieces I know, especially for those who may be new to the program and supports and are still interested in learning more about what does the support really look like in action, we'll be providing some fall ride-along opportunities. And so whether you're joining a potential improvement review or our cross-cohort learning opportunities, we'll make sure to provide some things that if you want to get some early insights into what the support could look like. And then in November, as long as we are able to stay on the timeline, we'll be releasing who your technical assistance provider matches. We'll also be releasing any data fellow resources that could help support the hiring of that position. Right now, we're holding 3 different options for the January kickoff. So the 26th, 27th, the 28th from 9 to 10:30. On December, we'll finalize which dates you can expect to attend. Your RSSP lead will absolutely need to attend. We also highly encourage the rest of your team as well. And so that's why we're trying to provide some flexibility and options, and especially knowing could be a busy time of year, but we heard your early feedback when we released the program information at the beginning of the TCLAS process that originally we were expecting to not launch until March, but had heard a lot of feedback that your strategic planning processes started even as early as January, and that would be more helpful if we could start support sooner. So we have heard you and made sure we could mobilize to meet this need across the cohort. And so again, really appreciate every time you all provide context and information that really helps us to drive the support to make sure that it's meeting your needs. All right. And so here is the survey that we are asking you to take. We ask that it be your RSSP lead or senior sponsor who completes the survey. You may not have this person designated just yet, but someone who will really be at the forefront of this work, who can provide all of the different contexts we're thinking about when it comes to some of the early input around the data fellow, your technical assistance provider match, as well as other information we're seeking. And so you can either take a picture of the QR code to quickly get access to this link, or also access it at this bit.ly link. We are asking that you complete it by the end of this week. We are looking to move quickly to solidify and stamp next decisions and support, especially as we're shaping up the procurement process. And again, your input is essential to us as we continue to build this program to meet your needs. And so please feel free if you have any questions or suspect any issues when filling it out. Again, always happy to answer any questions. And so in terms of next steps from here, we do know there's many people who signed up for quite a few things, and that this is a significant amount of time and effort for many across your districts and campuses. After learning more about today's webinar, if you don't believe that this is the best option for your district moving forward, we completely understand. And so the next steps to take would be to send an email to tclas@tea.texas.gov, just letting them know that you've decided to not accept this 1A or 1B award moving forward. Please know, though, that if you decline 1A, you would no longer be eligible for the 1B Data Fellow grant. Wonderful. And so when it comes to questions, if there's anything broader TCLAS related, you'll send those to the tclas@tea.texas.gov email address. If there's anything Decision1 specific, feel free to utilize our RSSP address. I know we also shared at the beginning, and when these slides come out, and many of you also have access to our emails or already check in with various people on our program. So feel free to reach out to us individually as well. We kind of keep an eye on all of our different mailboxes, and know this is a timely consideration as you all are accepting your awards, determining next steps. And so we're aiming to be responsive and ensuring we're answering as many questions as quickly as we can. Wonderful. Well, we appreciate your time today. I know another couple next steps is that you'll complete the e-grants assurances and fill that part out. There's those webinars there. And then you'll also have, if you've accepted awards for other webinars, you will also be attending those. But again, thank you all so much for your time. You'll receive a follow-up email from us that makes sure you have these slides, the recording. They'll also be posted on the TCLAS website. And like I said, we're continuing to collect a lot of the questions you've posed in the chat and the Q&A, and make sure we have answers or let you know when you can expect them. So we look forward to working with all of you in the next couple of years. And thank you again for your time. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.